Welcome back to Hardball. After 15 Republicans helped House Democrats pass a repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell this week, the Senate appears to have the 60 votes now necessary to end that 17-year-old ban on open service by gays in the U.S. military. A Senate vote is expected this Saturday. That's tomorrow. Is this finally going to get done? With us now, Democratic Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. We are so lucky to have one of the real stars of the United States Senate from the Empire State herself, Senator Gillibrand. It's so great to have you on an issue which I think is going to make you happy. Is this going to be history you're going to be part of this weekend?
Definitely. I am so excited about this vote because fundamentally, Chris, this is one of the most corrosive policies we could have as a government. It fundamentally undermines our integrity as an armed services and as a nation. And it really goes to the heart of who we are, because in this policy, we've lost 13,000 personnel. We've lost more than 10% of our foreign language speakers, and we've lost more than 800 in mission critical areas that we cannot easily replace. So these are the men and women we need. And, you know, we need all our best and brightest is fighting when we have two wars and we have terrorism, you know, all around. And this is something we really need to repeal.
Well, speaking of best and brightest, you have about 4 Republicans joining you in this now at the last minute. The 2 senators from Maine. I know you know these people up there on the Hill: Susan Collins, Olympia Snowe, Scott Brown, and Lisa Murkowski, who just won that write-in race. What do you think turned this into something of a bipartisan push? And I'm also hearing this rumor. I love it if you could tell me it's true. The word's out that once this comes to a vote and you pass the 60 mark for getting it to a vote, you know, getting cloture, that you're going to have a lot of Republicans jump on the bandwagon at the last.
That would be fantastic. I would be delighted to welcome all of those Republicans to be among those who believe this is a corrosive policy that has to be repealed. I think it's just a generational issue, Chris. I think over time people's views have changed, and people realize now that this is also about military readiness, that fundamentally we need all of these men and women serving because we've lost so many, and think of the countless number of people who haven't joined the services because of this policy. So I think there's a lot of issues at play here, and for my part, I also think it's the civil rights march of our generation. This is truly about equality. It's about equal rights. It's about civil rights. And these men and women, they want nothing but to serve this country and are literally being told that they can't based on who they love. And that is not who we are as Americans.
Let's take a look at what Senator John McCain said back in 2006 on the Hardball College Tour. A golden oldie, speaking of age differences. Let's listen.
The day that the leadership of the military comes to me and says, Senator, we ought to change the policy, then I think we ought to consider seriously changing it, because those leaders in the military are the ones we give the responsibility to.
Well, that may not sound familiar, but he actually did say that, Senator. He said if the military high brass thought it ought to be changed, he'd be with him. He's since demurred on that. We'll see how he ends up on the vote. Let me ask you about something I know you've been involved with very much with Senator Schumer, as the 2 senators from New York, the first responders health issue. What is the health crisis facing people who were involved in dealing with the initial horror of 9/11?
Well, as you remember, Chris, these are our first responders. These are the ones who were running up the towers when everyone was coming down. They're the ones who went to the pile day in, day out, first looking for survivors, then remains, then doing the cleanup. And what happened is the toxins that were released from these towers were so awful and so horrific. They are now dying of cancer and other terrible diseases because of the health effects of these toxins. And also, you have to remember the families that lived at Ground Zero. A lot of the children who are most vulnerable, they're experiencing asthma and other lung ailments. And so we really need to make sure they have the health care that they need.
Well, what's going to happen? You got about a few days left of this session. Is it going to get done?
It is going to get done. We are going to have a vote. It'll be an up or down vote just on the 9/11 health bill. And I think we will have the Republican support that we need now to pass that bill. What I'm looking for, Chris, is a Christmas miracle. And I really believe that people of goodwill can come together and really stand behind these first responders.
Senator Gillibrand, please come back to Hardball often. Thanks for coming on. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas
and to everybody in the Empire State. Let's turn now to U.S. Congressman Jared Polis. He's a Democrat from Colorado. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us. And people tell me that you're the first openly gay person who's actually been elected as such. You didn't come out afterwards. Let me ask you about this this whole question of dealing with this issue of open service. Are we going to get there?
You know, we absolutely, we should have gotten there 20 years ago. I mean, this issue is going to meet with a collective sigh when it's done. The public, the military, they've so moved past this. We're fighting the battles of 20 years ago here. It's time to pass this and move on.
What do you think is going to be implementation? Look, I want this to happen. I've said I'm allowed to have an opinion on this program, and I'm for it. I am concerned about the differences it's going to create. I mean, you don't have to get weird about it, but ask them how you're going to deal with sexual attraction in the military when you have men in close quarters, women in close quarters. They used to separate by gender in barracks and all that stuff. Is there any need for any further rules, or is it just going to be common sense, or what?
Non-issue. Look, I mean, we have gays and lesbians living in college dormitories today. Oh gosh, oh my, what are they going to do? And firefighters, police forces. Look, we have strict rules of behavior that members of the military undertake, whether it's same-sex, opposite sex, around harassment, around fraternization. Those rules all hold. They're all important rules to have about what people do and what their conduct is. But it's just simply a non-issue for this generation.
Well,
and
it is. I agree with you. And you're a young guy, but it isn't a non-issue for. We look at these polls. We studied them intently here, and generally 70% of the serving military want this change. They're all for it. They don't see a problem in it. But then you see those guys in the fight and women in the fighting units of the Marines and the fighting units of the Army. That's where you get that pushback. What do you make of that? It's about 50-50.
Yeah, part of the reason that poll was done so well by the military, this research project, is not only did they ask, what do you think? Would you be worried about serving with someone who is a gay? But then they said, are you serving with somebody who's gay? And many of them thought that they were, and they didn't have a problem with it. So the problems are hypothetical. They're not real.
Well, were you surprised by this as a gay person? Were you surprised by this statement in the polling? I found it wonderful in a way because it showed it's not the caricature people, older generation people have. 5 out of 6 gay people serving in the military said that even if they were allowed to come out, if you will, to use the common term, even if they were allowed to serve openly as gay people, they wouldn't make any statement to that effect. They would go along, in effect, with the way it is now, but voluntarily. They wouldn't make an issue or a statement about their identity.
I mean, who goes around making a statement? I mean, you don't wear a sign that says you're gay or you're straight everywhere. But, you know, if it comes up with your friends, your partner happens to be the same sex or the opposite sex, they kind of figure out whether you're gay or not. But it's not something that you go around declaring. I mean, that's just a really strange way of looking at it. I certainly don't.
You're so cool. Anyway, thank you, Jared Polis. Thanks for joining us. You're so cash about these. Thank you very much. You are the new generation. Sir, I salute you. Thank you very much for your service.